Hello, football fans. Welcome to Week 18, the final week of the regular season for the Scuffed Football Podcast. This is Noah. I'm Ted. We're here to cover the previous week, but I think mostly this week we're going to talk about the playoffs and the future moving forward because that's a whole lot more interesting than a lot of these Week 18 games that don't mean shit. The really obvious place to start here is Damar Hamlin. I encourage those weak of heart not to go and watch the video, but he did collapse during the game with the Bengals. Really scary moment, especially because
you would like to share that there's
perfect timing. The scary part for me was that he did stand up before passing out again. It wasn't, just getting hit funny and having some difficulties. I mean, he stood up and then passed out again. Just regained consciousness either last night or this morning as we're recording here on Thursday. And my hat's off to the dude because that dude's a competitor. He woke up and the first words he said were, "Did we win?" So, all props to the guy. Hope he's okay. Hope he gets better, but really scary moment this week.
Yeah, I mean, I agreed. We watched that, collision with T. Higgins. Again, I just want to reiterate, there was nothing wrong with the play. It was a good play. It's just a freak incident. Obviously, our prayers are with Damar Hamlin. Again, the improvement is good. Obviously, still in the ICU, but everything's looking good. So,
yeah, just reminds you how scary football can be, but glad the dude's all right. The other reason that game is important, Noah and I were talking before the podcast, and like I mentioned earlier, that we're not going to cover a whole lot of the previous week. We're getting into playoff time, and so most of what we're going to talk about for the beginning part of this podcast is just to get to games that kind of have implications towards playoff chances and where teams are getting. So obviously I want to start with the Bills and Bengals game. Not only was this set to be a marquee game just because of the competition, but it also has playoff implications, depending on whether or not the NFL chooses to make up this game or how they choose to settle things. We were talking that there are a couple circumstances that could play out in which this game does not need to be played in order to make up seeding. One of which would be if the Bills win, the Chiefs lose, the Bengals lose. First, second, and third place are all locked in the AFC. You wouldn't necessarily need to make it up. If there are some weird circumstances that you could work out that if you give both the Bills and the Bengals a tie, that you could avoid making up this game and offsetting the playoff schedule. There are certain circumstances that you might have some contest for second seed for the home field advantage for a lot of different things here. Obviously, as we know, we'll keep you posted on what the playoff implications look like of this game or how they intend to make it up. Hopefully we can talk about it a little next week when we get some more answers. Other games that made a difference. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was reading on that. So keep
going. Some other games that made a difference. I want to start with the Packers and the Vikings. At one point this season, the Packers had a less than 0.5% chance to make the playoffs. I believe they were sitting at 2-6 at one point. Beating the Vikings means that they actually hold their own destiny to make it to the last seed of the NFC playoffs this year. Not only did they beat the Vikings huge and prove that they're getting hot at the right time, but they also kept their playoff chances alive, and they winning this week means they're in.
Yeah, I mean, again, this is a pretty big game. It's pretty. I'm happy. Listen, we talked about the Packers being originally one of the top teams, and now we're seeing them almost be able to sneak in. So I'm actually pretty excited. Obviously, I would love to see the Lions in the playoffs. I feel like we could use some Lions offense, but again, they've been resilient. They've pushed through everything, and they've been playing pretty good recently. So.
Yeah, we'll get a little more into specific teams and their playoff circumstances a little later on, but I did think it was pretty significant that the Packers kept themselves alive. The Chargers, I know, 2 podcasts ago we were talking about can the Chargers get in, but they actually locked themselves into the 6th seed by beating the Rams this week, which is a pretty miraculous turnaround from where their season started. They really put things together. We're actually... Tom Brady with a win over Carolina this week locks himself into the playoffs. I didn't think I'd ever have to say that at the end of a week 17, but here we are.
With his team at 8-8, yeah.
We could see a losing Tom Brady, a losing record Tom Brady in the playoffs. And I know I know that those gambling lines are still going to be stacked in his favor because it's still Tom Brady in the playoffs, man. Absolutely crazy. The Giants also beat the Colts, which locks them into the NFC's 6th seed. I mean, I think the way they've played as a body of work this season, that's about right for them.
I don't know if we go body of work. That feels like a little far-fetched. They've been playing really good. Don't listen. You had me convinced they were good, and then I watched Philly run through them, and I was convinced they were done. And then putting up 38 and winning against the Colts. I mean, again, it's the Colts, but they still did it.
I'm just saying that I think a 6th seed is appropriate. I mean, compared to what we've seen from a lot of the rest of the NFC, like, they've won some good games that they shouldn't have. They've lost some bad games that they shouldn't have. Like, I'm not saying that they're out here as a Super Bowl favorite, but I think a 6th seed is appropriate. Like, they've earned their place in that spot for the year.
Yeah, I agreed. I think they should be in the playoffs. They've played very well. I would love to see what they can do.
Absolutely. The Patriots and the Dolphins played this week, and this one is mostly significant only because the Patriots win means that they now own the tiebreaker over the Dolphins while they both sit at 8-8 looking for that last playoff spot in the AFC. Again, we'll get into specific scenarios in a little bit, but the last game I want to talk about is very similar to the Packers keeping their playoff hopes alive. The Steelers. How the fuck did we get here? We said all season long that the AFC was good, that it was going to be a struggle for the last playoff race. Pittsburgh still has a chance to sneak into the playoffs, and Tomlin can still go 500 every single season for 18 years. How the hell are we here?
Listen, the man's a magician. Simple as that. We're seeing just him be great.
Good Lord, man. I have belief in Kenny Pickett. I didn't believe that this team was going to make themselves into a potential winning record and a playoff spot based on when he got his first start this season. Unreal. All right. So that's just to cover basically this past week in a nutshell, but honestly, who gives a shit because most of these games don't matter. Let's talk about playoff scenarios. So I think we'll start with the NFC, just because I believe that the races are simpler. So the NFC first seed is still up for grabs between the Eagles, the 49ers, and the Cowboys. The Eagles, if they win, that's it. First seed, win the division, win a conference, first seed. Easy. If the 49ers win, or if the 49ers and the Cowboys both lose, the Eagles have the first seed. Really simple. The 49ers need a win to take this first seed, regardless. If Philadelphia loses and the 49ers win, 49ers are first seed, and that's it. And then the only contest would be the Eagles and the Cowboys for the division and who gets the second seed versus who gets the 5th seed. Dallas needs a little more help. They obviously need to win. They need Philadelphia and San Francisco both to lose in order to take that first seed. However, even if San Francisco wins, Dallas wins, the Eagles lose, Dallas still takes the division, which would mean that they'd own the second seed. Eagles would own the 5th seed, which obviously changes things a lot for Dallas. Super encouraged to win. For you, Noah, what do you see as the most realistic way this plays out? Where do you think everybody lands up?
Listen, I would love to see a Niners in the first seed. I would love to. I do think they have the chance to do it. Again, seeing the Eagles kind of flounder, especially against the Saints, who we haven't seen be so good, it does, bring a little bit of hope for, San Francisco fans. But again, it all depends on if Hurts is going to be back this week. If Hurts is back, I gotta say I don't think the Eagles are losing. I mean, this is great. It's coming down to the last week. We haven't seen anyone clinch up anything just yet, even including in the AFC. So I'm happy, and we might have our playoff picture almost set, but I like the top vying spots. I like that. That's great. We haven't seen that a lot recently.
It definitely adds some parity, especially since a lot of the talking heads around the league have talked about how much better the Eagles are than everybody else. I mean, we heard some Dallas chatter there for a while, and then they go and lose a game that they shouldn't, right? Like, I think what's most realistically, I think Jalen Hurts is set to play this week, so I think it's most realistic that the Eagles take the first seed. But I think what's really significant here is that, whichever team loses out of this contest, right, but like the Eagles and the Cowboys, whoever gets the short end of that straw, they lose out on a home game, despite being tied for potentially the second best record in the league. Like, or in the NFC at the very least, like they're a 5th seed. They won't get a home playoff game. And I think that's really significant to have to go on the road, even though you're playing Tom Brady and the Bucs, who haven't been good this year. Like, you still have to go on the road for your playoff chances. Your road to the Super Bowl is going to be all away stadiums. And I think that's really, really significant.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about, the power of home, home turf and everything. And so, yeah, I 100% think if it's the difference between Eagles at home or Eagles on the road or Dallas, is like, I think you're asking too much if every single game is away and you have to slate up. So I definitely think that home field advantage is very important, especially for the NFC. I think that's kind of where it's going to swing the most. I don't think the AFC is as controlled crowd wise. I don't think the crowd does as much, but definitely Eagles, Niners, Cowboy fans, they're going to be going crazy.
I think a nice part here too is the nicest seat in the house for these 3 teams, for me at least, would be the 49ers, right? If you watch the Eagles win, then you don't really have to put in that much effort. You can rest some of your starters. I mean, you can coast knowing that you're confidently in the 2nd seed, right? I think that gives the 49ers a lot of comfort there. And you only really have to push forward if you're watching the Eagles lose, where you know that's a realistic possibility. I think you can get both squads ready for the day. You can practice first team and 2nd team, have everybody ready to play, whether they start or not, and go into that game fully prepared. Also, the benefit is they play the Cardinals. So, I mean, they're kind of going to get handed some stuff here at the end of the season with the very injured Cardinals team who are out of contention.
Right. And I mean, again, so even being number 2, I think it sits for them. Even, we see the Eagles win and they rest their starters. They don't have to worry about, being sliding to 3 because of the, conference percentage of them being 9-2. And even if they lose, the Vikings are still 7-4 in the conference, so they have nothing to fear. So,
exactly. The worst the Niners are going to do is 2nd.
Yeah,
the
exactly.
Worst. The other spot that's up in the NFC, because 2 through 6 are technically locked down. There's some parity with the 5 seed based on who loses the division between the Eagles and the Cowboys, but that spot is filled by one of those 2 teams for sure. The other spot that's up is the 7th seed. This one is a little bit more complicated just based on who's playing who this week. So, like I mentioned earlier, Green Bay, the Packers own their own destiny. If they win, they're in. That's it. All there is to it. The complication here is that Green Bay plays Detroit, who is also up for the same spot. However, Detroit needs help because they also, not only do they need to win the game, they need Seattle to lose. Seattle then needs to obviously win their game, and Green Bay needs to lose. Seattle needs to gain a game somewhere on Green Bay. Even if it's a win and a tie, Seattle still owns that record to get in. They just need to, gain that half game somewhere. Who do you got for the 7th spot? Who do you like in the Green Bay-Detroit matchup? How do you think Seattle's chances look when Green Bay and the Lions play each other?
I forget who are the Seahawks playing this week?
Seahawks have the Rams. The Seahawks are at home.
Then I 100% expect the 7th seed to stay locked with the Seahawks. I think the Packers will win this game. Again, I would love to see Lions in, but I do expect that again. I mean, the Rams haven't been terrible recently, but I still think Seahawks make this. I think, Seahawks, Packers win, but Seahawks hold the tiebreaker, so it doesn't matter.
Well, the Packers actually own the tiebreaker over Seattle. So if the Packers win, they're in, right? I mean, I think, genuinely for me, I think the Packers have the hardest route to get here, right? The Packers have been good recently, but the Lions have been playing good football. They've obviously pushed their way into where we're talking about them for a playoff push, right? I don't think Green Bay gets this for free by any stretch of the imagination. I think it's likely that Green Bay wins the game, but it's not a given that, I think Seattle's got their shot. Seattle's just been on such a skid lately. I know they beat the Jets, but I have a hard time seeing Seattle getting in, right? Picking Seattle to win kind of hurts. The Rams have been playing better football the past few weeks. Baker's given them some sort of fucking juice out there. I realistically don't see Seattle winning the game. And I think that means there's a lot of pressure on the Lions and the Packers playing each other to win the game. I think whoever wins that football game is in. If it was straight up, I'd probably take the Packers, but it really wouldn't surprise me if the Lions win. And I think whoever wins has to be the favorite to get in.
Well, we just watched the Packers hang 41 on the Vikings, so that's all I'm saying.
Fair enough. I guess it depends what teams show up there, but I think that'll be interesting, and both of them being late games on Sunday will give you a reason to watch all day. That's for damn sure.
True.
We'll move into the AFC now. Things get a little more complicated and messy here. So right now, the first seed is up for grabs as well. As it stands, because of the Bills and Bengals postponing or suspending, I guess is the better word, Kansas City. Oh, God. Yeah. Kansas City currently owns the first seed by half a game over the Bills. What that basically means is the Bills haven't finished. Like, the Bills win means they're tied and the Bills own the tiebreaker. They lose and the Kansas City owns the first seed. The difficulty comes in where the Chiefs are in this middle ground where they're half a game below the Bills. They're a game and a half up on the Bengals. If depending on how that Bills-Bengals game ends or is decided, the Chiefs can sit in a weird spot and cause some tiebreakers wherever they finish. So first, second, and third seeds are all up for grabs based on what the NFL decides to do with that suspended game.
Yeah, I mean, again, we had talked a lot before, especially about the Bengals adding 2 wins, and if the Chiefs lose, then you got to play that game out. In general, if the Bills and Chiefs win, you got to play that game out. Like we talked about, different things. Obviously, they could do the tie, but I was looking at strength of victory, strength of schedule, like all of these things. Like I'm biased, but the Bills are better. Okay, so technically, we should have the first seed. But even the Bengals, like their strength of victory, their strength of schedule is a lot higher than the Chiefs as well. So, I mean, obviously, if the Bengals win and the Chiefs lose, I would love to see the Chiefs slide all the way to the third. And then we get Bills, Bengals, Chiefs, and everything's golden.
What I can say is that all 3 of those teams are locked into those 3 spots. I suppose, like, there is technically a circumstance where if the Bengals were to lose the game against the Bills and then lose again with a Ravens win in Week 18, that I don't know who owns that tiebreaker offhand between the Bengals and the Ravens, but technically I guess the Ravens could make a push for the division. While I believe that to be unlikely, and if I'm not mistaken, the Bengals won most recently against the Bengals. The reason I don't know the tiebreaker is because the Ravens and Bengals played this week. So I guess that, right. So the Ravens beating the Bengals would add some parity as far as that tiebreaker goes for that division. But realistically, you're looking at the AFC North winner, the Chiefs and the Bills, as the 1, 2, and 3 seed in whatever order. I believe the Bengals cannot own first in the AFC, but I could. No, they could. They could. Fuck. Anyway, there's some parity there. It's difficult to speculate as to what's going to happen or what we think is going to happen when we don't know how the NFL is going to respond to the suspended game.
I just want to say real quick, we're talking about the AFC, and then, the first 3 teams seem appropriate, and then at 4, we have the slated Jags.
That's actually my next spot there. So theoretically, the Jags currently own the division lead, which is absolute insanity to me, but the Jags own the division lead. Theoretically, the Jags and the Titans play this week. If the Titans win the game against the Jags, they own the tiebreaker. The Titans could win the division. The Jags could then miss the playoffs. It's possible. Winner of that game gets 4th seed. Pretty cut and dry. We'll tell you what we think when we get to picks at the end of this podcast. So no chance or no point in us, speculating on it now and doing it again later.
True.
The other seed in the AFC that is up for grabs, because the 5th and 6th seed are locked down. 5th seed being the AFC North 2nd place finisher, either the Bengals or the Ravens, and the 6th seed going to the Chargers. The 7th seed has quite a few teams that could make it. New England currently owns the 7th seed. If they win, they're in. End of story, it's done. Miami, who we talked about all season as making some noise and being a playoff quality team, very well needs some help to make it. Not only do they need to win their game, they also need the Bills to take care of the Patriots. So they need to win.
Don't worry, Ted. Okay?
Listen, while I believe both of those outcomes to be fully realistic, where the Dolphins win and New England loses, that's what Miami needs to get into the playoffs. A third wild team appears. It's the goddamn Pittsburgh Steelers. How? Pittsburgh needs the most help. Not only do they need to win, they need New England and Miami both to lose for Pittsburgh to get into the playoffs. How do you see this being most realistic? Who gets in?
Well, I mean, again, we can't also count out both the Titans and the Jags still. I mean, even though the Jags are in fourth, I mean, again, even losing that game and then we see the Titans boost up, we can't. These are all teams
Titans the Titans and Jags actually play each other, so both of them can't make the playoffs.
Well, yeah, but one of them's going to have to go out. So it's kind of like we're all vying for that spot. It's going to be an interesting weekend. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. As far as the 7th seed for me, I think what's most realistic is Miami making it, which requires their win and a New England loss. I don't see a circumstance where the Bills don't play this game to their fullest. I think if they played a bunch of fucking high school schmucks who played in Bills uniforms, they'd have the motivation to win this game. Buffalo's just a better team. They got to play for DeMar Hamlin. But Buffalo by 1 billion.
I think now, especially with the injury, if you're not behind Bills Mafia, I don't know what you're doing. Bills in the way.
Bills by 1 billion, dude. The other part of that Miami needs to get in is obviously winning their own game, not just Buffalo beating New England. With the Jets being eliminated from playoff contention, I think that the Jets would have to rest their starters, not play guys that could potentially get injured. I don't see the Dolphins circumstance not working out. I think it would be very interesting if New England manages to win their game, but I don't think that's going to happen. I think Pittsburgh needs a fucking miracle for both those teams to lose. I don't see Miami taking an L this week, but I think it's Miami is most realistic. Pittsburgh is second most, and I think the largest outside chance, despite controlling their own fate, is the Patriots.
Yeah, agreed. I don't even know what to do if you're the Dolphins. Again, your boy too has 5 concussions this entire season. So, at this point, I don't know how much I trust Teddy Bridgewater, but I would start thinking about it because, if you lose Tua here and you clinch up a playoff spot, can you really trust Bridgewater to lead you to the playoffs like that?
I don't know. I don't know. I guess part of that for whoever wins the 7th seed is how the top end of the AFC shakes out, right? Playing the Bills looks a whole lot different at this point than playing the Chiefs, right? The Bills are still the best team in football. I'll still die on that hill, right? A 3-game series, the Bills beat everybody, and I'm not thinking twice about it, right? I don't think you want to play the Bills if the Bills end up in second. But I think, like you mentioned, with the strength of schedule and the quality of their wins, I think the Chiefs are a much more approachable team if you are the Dolphins, if you are the Patriots. I think if the Chiefs finish in second, maybe you can trust Bridgewater to at least keep you competitive in that game, even if you're not the favorite to win, right? I don't think it matters who your quarterback is if you're going into Buffalo and playing a road game in the fucking frozen tundra, right? I think a lot of it comes down to how that top seeding works out as to how realistic your chances are as a Miami, as a New England, as a Pittsburgh.
Yeah, agreed. I think, again, the road going through Kansas City or the road going through Buffalo, it's very different. Both of them can snow, but I think Buffalo is a lot harder to win, and that's what I'm rooting for.
Yeah, even Cincinnati's been playing insane. If you don't count the suspended game here, the Bills are the Bengals, are on a 7-game win streak. They might be the hardest place to go in and walk into with the kind of play they've been putting together.
Can't count out the Niners. They're on a 9-game run. So.
Okay, excuse AFC. They might be the hardest place to walk into in the AFC. Let me hold back. All right. All right. So with all that out of the way, I just want to say this now. When we get into next week, coverage on Week 18 is going to be very brief, and we're just going to spend a whole lot of time looking at playoff matchups and what we expect to happen. I'm gonna tell you that now because we're spending this much time on scenarios to get in. All we're talking is playoffs by next week. With that, because we won't spend a lot of time in the regular season, I think now is the most appropriate time for us to get into end-of-season awards and talk about who we think is most realistic for some of these awards. I guess we'll go least flashy to most flashy. Let's start with Coach of the Year. Who you got?
Coach of the Year.
For me, Coach of the Year is always one of the more difficult awards to pick, right? You could go ahead and pick a Nick Sirianni who's like, we have the best record, so we're the best, and he's Coach of the Year, right? Great, fantastic. But I don't think that he's necessarily done the best coaching job, right? I would say that Kyle Shanahan, maybe of the 49ers, has done the best coaching job. But again, if you're looking at, really good record wins, no, maybe you're looking at the most unexpected results. A team that you decided that was going to bottom feed, and suddenly here they are in the playoffs, like a Brian Daboll, right? I think if I were to place money on it, I think my pick would probably be Nick Sirianni, only because of the way that the Eagles have performed this season. I think most deserving would be Brian Daboll.
Who's Brian?
Brian Daboll is coach of the Giants.
Okay, that's actually who I was going to pick. I was going to say the Giants. They've improved significantly. They're in the playoffs. Like, they're cooking. Like, I actually respect the team now. It's kind of weird to say. But again, best record. Like, you could bring up the Chiefs, the Bills, the Bengals, even the Eagles, the Niners. Like, all of these teams with, like, really good records, even the Vikings. Like, but I think the coach who's done the most to kind of, like, because, again, the Giants were terrible last year, and they didn't really change too much. Like, they just changed how they played, and now they're in the playoffs. So I would 100% give it to the head coach. He's done an amazing job this season.
Like I said, I think Daboll is most deserving. I just think this is the weirdest award to pick because, like, it's very hard to say that the 9-7 Giants coach did a better job than a 13-3 team in the Eagles, right? Like, I think the Coach of the Year is maybe the hardest one to pick, but it's also the one I give the least shit about. Yeah. So I think that brings us to Rookies of the Year, both offensive and defensive. I'd prefer to start with Defensive Rookie of the Year because I think that one's way more cut and dry. I don't see that getting taken to anybody other than Sauce Gardner of the Jets. Don't see it happening.
Of who?
Sauce Gardner, the Jets cornerback.
Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah. All right, agreed. I like that pick. Definitely, yeah. Boy was playing out of his mind.
And the Jets' defense was Super Bowl good most of this season, right? Like, the biggest piece, like, Sauce Gardner is, if your family has football fans, he's been a household name this season, and he's a rookie. Like, that Sauce Gardner's got to be up there for you. Offensive Rookie of the Year, I think gets a little bit tougher. For me, I'm having difficulty picking between Garrett Wilson and Christian Watson.
Thank you for putting some respect on my boy Watson. Yes, Christian Watson, 100%. He was a big part of that turnaround in Green Bay and getting that momentum going. I would say Christian Watson all the way. Yeah, he's definitely a fan favorite.
I think Watson is the more realistic pick. Like, again, if I was gambling on it rather than just making my picks, my money would be on Watson, specifically because it's way easier to look at the second half of the season than the first half of the season. Like you mentioned, he's a big part of their playoff push was Watson and finding a different receiver there in Green Bay. But I think, like, overall season whole, I think Garrett Wilson has been more consistent. So realistically, I think it could go either way there, but I don't know. I think that one's a whole lot less flashy because neither one of them look like Sauce Gardner's looked in New York.
As good as Christian Watson has been, it's nowhere near.
He ain't no Sauce Gardner. I think we'll then look at Offensive Player of the Year, Defensive Player of the Year. I want to preface this by saying that, like, the MVP is pretty much a quarterback award at this point. So the Offensive Player of the Year tends to go to a non-quarterback, right? I think the most obvious answer to this is Justin Jefferson. I know you're waving me off already, but I think it's Justin Jefferson.
Interesting. Okay.
I don't see anybody. I don't see any non-quarterback having the impact that Justin Jefferson had. I mean, it was 2 weeks ago, sitting in these chairs on this podcast, saying that he could break the single season record. He could be the first 2,000 yard. While that number may now be unreachable, like, Justin Jefferson's been a fucking game breaker, dude. I don't see anybody having a bigger impact that isn't a quarterback than Justin Jefferson.
I did initially have another name who I thought was more deserving, but I think would be for a better, like a different award. So yes, I will say offensive player, 100% Justin Jefferson. He's been there every time they needed him. There's been no one who's been more valuable to the team non-quarterback.
I am curious as to your other name though. Who were you considering beyond Jefferson?
Before you had brought Jefferson, I actually was going to say Tony Pollard. I think he's been balling out, and I think what he's done there is been impressive, even behind, the star-studded name of Ezekiel Elliott. Like, he is the guy now almost. Like, I'm loving what Tony is doing there, and I think he would have been deserving of it, but I do like Justin Jefferson. So
Tony Pollard's a good one, man. I think he gets stuck in an unfair spot specifically because he has been splitting time. Like, I think it's tough for it. Like, I don't think you'd ever see like a wide receiver 3 on this list, right? Like of offensive player of the year winners. But I do think that he's made a huge impact. I guess that opens the door for me a little bit to consider guys like I'm going to say this as an example, not because I think he's deserving. So bear with me with the homerism shit before you.
All right.
But it opens the doors for guys like AJ Green, right? Like, or Tyreek Hill, for example, right? That yes, they've had really standout seasons. They've been really, really good, but they're technically quote unquote splitting time because there's a second receiver on both of those teams. So where the Dolphins have Waddle, the Eagles have Smith. Fuck. Yes. Couldn't come up with a first name. It was a duh sound and Smith. That's my team. I should fucking know it, huh? But but I guess that offensive player of the year opens that door for me. I guess Jefferson's just so significant because they really haven't used a second weapon all year. Hawkinson's had a good year since he's gotten there. Thielen is always a weapon, but it's still been Jefferson all season long.
And I agreed. I'm not saying he doesn't deserve it, but I think that conversation shouldn't just be who has the most stats, who has the best kind of play. I think Tony Pollard, he might not have the stats to be an MVP, but I think he's played his heart out. I think he's played with everything he's got. I think he deserves to be in that conversation. But again, I do agree. Justin Jefferson is a different level, so I'm not saying no, but I do believe that these Tyreek Hill, sure. I think if I saw more from Tyreek Hill, I would have included him in this category. But I don't think I saw enough from him, even with his standout season, just in general.
I guess that's fair. I mean, you mentioned, it's not all about stats, right? And I guess that opens the door for guys like Green, who, while he had a great year, he's not Justin Jefferson, right? But I guess it's just more impactful for me to see Jefferson be the main focus on a team that should have so many weapons. It's still just Jefferson every single week. Tony Pollard is just it's so interesting to me because he's very, very rarely on the field with Zeke at the same time. It's genuinely, if Zeke's getting the ball, Pollard's not even on the field. It's that you've added enough of a seed of a doubt. I was so ready for this to be just it's Justin Jefferson and move on with my life, but damn, dude, I'm thinking about it now. Defensive player of the year is always a hard one for me to pick, mostly because the positions are so different. I know that the gambling favorite by leaps, bounds, galaxies away is Nick Bosa.
That's what you were going to say, yeah.
Obviously, Nick Bosa's had a great year. Don't get me wrong. I'm not here to take anything away from him. Again, would be my gambling pick. Done, signed, sealed, delivered. I guess it's just the defense is hard enough for me that it's hard to look at a defensive lineman and say that they had more of an impact than a really good safety or a cornerback, or to be more involved with running and passing plays than a linebacker would be. I do also, again, while I'm making that argument that positions are hard to compare, I also the shade that I'm going to throw in there, just the shadow of a doubt, is going to be Micah Parsons, despite being in the same position. For me, Bosa, it should win this award. I don't know that it's going to be close, but I think Parsons has had himself enough of a season that maybe we ought to think about it for a second before giving it to Bosa anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. We've seen really great seasons, and not just from them too. We've seen great seasons in general, defensive-wise. But again, I think that it's a little bit harder. Again, we talked about the MVP being a QB award. And I think like defensively, I think it's usually the person who we like. Yes, defensive backs, cornerbacks, safeties, whatever. Like they have, really good stats, right? They can do a really good job defending, but they don't always have the numbers to like back up that talk, I guess. But like you see, Boza, he has like 18 sacks, whatever, right? Like those are pretty impactful. But like you don't see, I feel like people don't account, like let's say even, someone like Micah Hyde, right? He had like 12 passes defense. Like people don't just see that. They don't know about that. So I think it's a pretty cut and dry, like, oh, you're a big name. I feel like we don't actually talk about big, like the actual defensive stars all the time.
I think it's just hard to measure, right? Like, I mean, you mentioned passes defended there, right? But like, I think about like what's more impactful, right? It's 1st and 10, and you get a sack that makes it 2nd and 18, where the offense still gets their chance to convert, or an interception on 1st down that you get to take the ball away, right? Those sack numbers are almost always going to be bigger than the interception numbers, right, for the league leaders. But like, which is more impactful? Like taking the ball away? How many? What's the math on it, right? How many sacks do I need to equal one interception?
Right. And I mean, we saw that last season. Diggs had a great season, like 12 picks, but like even that number wasn't enough to get him like the respect I thought he deserved.
Right. It's so like on offense, right? Whether it's a running back, whether it's a receiver, you can count yards. They're both earning the same amount of yards, right? Like, I mean, yes, while throwing has the bigger potential than running 99% of the time, like you're still gaining the same yards, right? Like you can make that comparison really evenly. Defense is just difficult because I'm not looking at a dude like Nick Bosa to have 7 interceptions in a season. I'm not looking for a dude like Diggs to have 18 sacks. Like it's not the position they play. It's just so difficult to do that math. I think Nick Bosa, like, again, to give him his credit, like I think he's been the most impactful player on defense. I think he's the guy. I guess it's just hard for me to so convincingly say it's Nick Bosa when he's not doing all of the jobs. He's just doing his own job. And is he doing his better than Sauce Gardner is doing his, right? Like it's just so hard for me to make that math work.
Well, I mean, again, comparing them, you could bring again, like we're trying to figure out what's the value, right? How many sacks equal, an interception. I think at the end of the day, it comes down to like the wins. So like, is what Bosa did enough to bring them into the playoffs and like help them win those games? Yes, it did. And I'm not saying that Gardner hasn't helped them, but now we're seeing the Jets out of the playoffs, and I think that conversation is like more one dimensional.
Right. I don't think Gardner deserves Defensive Player of the Year. Don't get me wrong. Like I used him as the example because we mentioned him earlier. I just like I don't know. Like if you look at it at so when the Cowboys beat the Eagles, right? It's their signature win this season. Like not to say the Cowboys haven't done more than that, but like if you got a staple one, this was their biggest win. It was them beating the Eagles, right? I think like if you as Micah Parsons, right, you go and get a sack on Gardner Minshew, right, and then the Eagles march down the field and score a touchdown anyway. What did your sack mean other than padding your own stats, right? Versus a guy like Diggs, he gets an interception. Well, now the Eagles can't score because they don't have the football, right? Like I think the impactful part of that specific game, the Cowboys versus the Eagles, the thing that won the Cowboys the game was forcing 4 turnovers. I think like it's very difficult for me to measure what a sack is worth versus what an interception is worth, what it means in the long term of the game, or if at the end of the year when you're looking at Defensive Player of the Year, did this sack mean more than this interception, and comparing everything 1-to-1. Like it's much harder to pick. I can confidently say that I think it will be Nick Bosa, but it's just such a hard award for me to commit to and pick.
Agreed.
That brings us to the last one I want to talk about, which is the MVP. I know we brought this up a couple of times. I had my early season MVP, dark horse that I regret saying out loud. We talked about it at our halfway point of the season, and I know we brought it up again a couple of weeks ago. At this point in time, just based on what we've seen, in my opinion, I think the MVP shouldn't be cut and dry, but it is cut and dry. And I think the MVP for me is Jalen Hurts. I'm gonna defend it because I don't think he's been the best player in football. I don't think he's been the best quarterback. I think he's the benefit of the best or of the quarterback of the best team. I also think that Jalen Hurts weirdly gets some benefit from missing the last 2 weeks. You can see the difference in the drop off between what Jalen Hurts is and what Gardner Minshew, a starting quarterback in the league 2 years ago, is worth, right? I think that there's other arguments that could be made. I wouldn't tell somebody they were wrong for picking Mahomes, for picking Josh Allen, for picking Joe Burrow. I don't think there's not validity to those arguments, but I think that there's a couple of games the Bills have lost this season that was Josh Allen throwing turnovers to the Jets, right? I think there's an argument that Mahomes hasn't had the strongest season. His stats have been really good, but how much of that can you attribute to the coach instead of to the quarterback? I think that Burrow started his season so weak that if you're looking at full body of work, it's the quarterback of the best team and the significant drop-off between starter and backup that makes it pretty clear-cut for me that it's Hurts.
Well, I actually have a completely different answer.
Okay.
But for the purposes, if I was betting, it's, where I'm going. Allen, every time. But the point of the MVP is the most valuable. Right? So it's the most valuable player on your team, right? So I actually think kind of what you had said about, Hurts getting the benefit of not playing the past 2 weeks. I think the way he's played when he's healthy versus when he's out and how the team does, I actually think your most valuable player is Tua.
That's wild to me. I'm not even disagreeing with you, right? I think he provides the most value to his team. I guess it's just hard for me to validate that because if you look at the MVP season in, season out, it tends to be from the better teams, the top leading teams in the league, and where we're looking at week 18 that the Dolphins have the chance to miss the playoffs. I think you have a snowball's chance in hell of Tua actually winning versus maybe he actually is most valuable to his team.
So, again, agreed. Betting-wise, I'm going out at 100%. Though the way, when I first said that, you said, yes, the person who brings the most value to their team is Tua, we think.
Yep.
That's a personal opinion. That is the definition of most valuable.
Yep. I 100% give you that. I do. I guess there's a disconnect between what it actually is and how they vote on it that makes that almost two different awards.
Oh, agreed. Again, it's always, the top teams, the best player from the top teams. But I think if you're just going off most valuable player, as a simple definition, I think your MVP would be Tua.
Hard for me to disagree, man. He made that team a much better team. Why am I stressing about end of year awards? All right.
It's not like we're voting on it.
No, it should no. Nothing I say matters. All right. I think that wraps us up for what we have to talk about as far as real football goes, and now we get into fantasy. First, I would like my humble brag to say that for the first time I won my college league. I won it handedly. I have finished second place for 4 years in a row, so I'm happy to take this one. Noah's league. I sent him screenshots halfway through the day on Sunday about I had enough points to win the game sitting on my bench, and I'm going to end up losing this game. This one is nothing finalized because of the suspended game, but he's got Josh Allen, and I'm still down 20 points, so I think I can settle for second in that one.
Jack's team was just two builds.
Jack's team was good, but if you look at my bench, I had 35 free points sitting there that was enough to win this football game or this fantasy football game, man. I'm upset because I had the potential and I didn't close the deal. I played the wrong guys. I'm hurt. I'm going to take this one into next season. I'm going to remember it. As far as everything else in fantasy goes, most leagues are wrapped up or wrapping up, so I'm not going to give this a whole lot of extra thought, but if we hear anything next week as far as what the suspended game is going to turn into, if it does make a difference in your fantasy league, we'll give you an update if we get it. That brings us into gambling. I'm humbled again, twice in a row. Noah swept the floor with me this week. He had a 10-5, 10-5 week. I'm not going to count the suspended game. I went 5-10. That actually catches us up. So we're both at 115, 135, and 4 pending the suspended game.
Look at that.
Look, you pulled out one hell of a week 17, and we're tied together now. I was like, all right, I got 5 games. I'm confident. Fuck, dude, I'm humbled again. All right.
Gosh, I haven't had a double-digit win week in ever. So,
all right, that brings us into the final week of the regular season. We're going to start with the Chiefs and the Raiders. Chiefs are 9.5 favorites on the road.
I can't do this. I can't. I need the Chiefs to lose. I can't.
For me, I'm taking the Chiefs. Like we mentioned earlier, the playoffs aren't determined for seeding in the AFC, which tells me that the Chiefs have to play their starters. They have to go and play to win the game, especially when they're the first one on the register all week. Like, I have to take the Chiefs thinking they're going to play their starters against a much worse Raiders team. Chiefs should win by 10.
Yeah. As much as I would love the Chiefs to lose, as much as I'm hoping for it, I do fully also expect the Chiefs to kind of win this. So
it sucks when rooting interests go against your gambling interests.
Yeah.
That's how you make every game interesting. Not that I recommend it. I have the Titans and the Jags. Like I said earlier, winner gets in. I have the Jags as 6.5-point favorites at home. I think that the Jags are going to win this game. I don't know that it's going to be by 6.5. That is a rough spread. I'm taking the Titans because I 6.5 is big.
Gosh. Agreed. I think 6.5 is a spread for the Jags. I'm gonna go Jags here though because I think that with it being home, they'll be able to win by more than that. So
that game scares the shit out of me. I'm excited to watch it though. That's gonna be my 1:00 watch. You trust. I have Jets and Dolphins. Jets are 1-point favorites on the road. This one for me basically comes down to playoff seeding. Jets are out. They've got no reason to play starters. Dolphins have a reason to play for. I don't think that they're necessarily as good a team if the Jets were playing their starters because of the Dolphins' injuries. But because the Dolphins have to and the Jets don't give a shit, I think it's the Dolphins.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, my website is saying it's even now, so maybe that's changed.
Just because I pulled these lines an hour ago. So
Dolphins. I fully expect. I hope that they can get into the playoffs. I see the Dolphins and see what kind of noise they can make. So I'm going to.
All right. I have Browns Steelers. Steelers are 2.5 favorites at home. Again, for the exact same reason as the last one. Not only have the Steelers been playing hot, Browns don't have anything to play for. Steelers do. Steelers got to win. I'm taking the Steelers.
I would say I think technically the Browns are the better team. Deshaun kind of bounced back last week, but they have nothing to play for. If they start Deshaun, then I think it's just the chemistry, but I fully expect the Steelers to keep rolling, and hopefully we'll see.
Yeah. Man, I'd love to see my boy pick in the playoffs, but man, they got to work. I have Texans Colts. Colts are 2.5 favorites at home. Genuinely, who gives a fuck? Like, neither one of these teams are making it. Like, I don't care. I'm gonna take the Texans. Yeah, because I like parity, man. Fuck it. This game doesn't matter in the slightest to me.
Damn you. I was going to take the Texans. I was going to be, like, different and interesting. Now I got to, like, take the Colts. Like,
I'll let you go first on the next one then. I got Buck.
Agreed. I got to go Texans.
All right. If you're going first then, I got Bucks Falcons. Falcons are 4.5 favorites at home.
This isn't the one I wanted to pick first. These are terrible.
Look, at this point, neither team's got anything to play for. Like, this is going to be third string fucking bumfuck nobodies. Who the hell wins by 4.5 as your third string against a different team's third string? Give me the Bucks and the points.
don't even know, man. Can I just skip it? Like, I don't even want to take the walk.
Yeah, fine. So be it. Skip it. Forget the loss.
No, I'm gonna go Falcons, just a parody.
All right, perfect. I got Panthers Saints. Saints 3.5 favorites at home.
The Saints just fucking beat the Eagles. Saints all the way.
I think I'm with that. I like, again, it's another one of those games that doesn't fucking matter. It's the NFC South. Not only have they not mattered all season long, but neither one of these teams can do anything any different. I don't care. I'm taking the Saints. All right, finally, an interesting one. Patriots Bills. Bills are 7-point favorites at home.
Bill Mafia, Bills all the way.
I said it earlier. I say it again. Bills by 1 billion, dude. Not close. Vikings Bears. Vikings are 7.5 favorites on the road.
Oh, that was the other thing. Little backtrack. I thought we would bring up most improved player as.
Oh, I didn't catch that one, but yeah, hit me with it.
Justin Fields, all the way. All the way, Justin Fields.
Ooh.
Man is balling out. Get that man some help.
Look,
we'll have a decent team.
It's hard for me to give him that award because he didn't play enough last season. My most improved player would go to Geno Smith.
He was on the list.
Either way. Yeah. Anyway, Vikings, Bears. Vikings, 7.5 favorites.
That being said, Vikings all the way.
For me, Vikings are locked into third. I think they would benefit more than almost every other team in the league from not playing their starters this week. They've lost some real shit games the past 6 weeks or so that maybe you don't want your first round opponent to see your starters and your game plan. And the Bears have been playing better football. I know that the Bears don't have a whole lot to play for either, but the Bears have an electric quarterback. I'm going to take the Bears only because you're giving them 7.5.
Sure.
Ravens Bengals. Again, this one matters for the division. Bengals are 7-point favorites at home.
I honestly don't know how to do this one because, again, we see them really last week. Again, we saw one touchdown. Then, obviously, that accident happened and everything. So, I don't know. Like, I guess I would say they're still riding the momentum 7, right? They didn't lose last week. They didn't win.
Sure.
So, I'm going to go Bengals here, assuming they can keep their hot streak. But I also don't know because what happens if they win last week?
The Bengals still have the hope to gain that first seed, right? Like, theoretically, if the game had been played in its entirety last week and they beat the Bills, they could still be vying for this first seed. Realistically, I see the NFL trying to find every way out of playing this game that's humanly possible. If they can avoid it, they're not going to play it and throw off their playoff schedule. But I think the Bengals winning forces them to finish that game because the Bengals could win the first seed in the home game. I think the Bengals have every reason to try. I think the Ravens have been on a skid. I'm taking Cincinnati. I fucking hate this spread, but I have the Giants and the Eagles. Eagles are 14-point favorites at home.
You can pick this one first. I'm good with this one.
As much as I hate big spreads, I'm going to take the Eagles. The reason being, the Giants are locked into 6th no matter what. If they forfeited this game, they're still the 6th seed. It doesn't fucking matter. The Eagles still have to play and win the game for the first seed. The Eagles beat the Giants on the road earlier this season by more than 14. Now the Eagles get it at home, and they got something to play for. I'm going to take the Eagles as much as I hate picking them on a 14-pointer.
I'm looking at the next fucking line as well. But looking at this one, listen, I agree with all the points you made. I agree everything, but I still think the Giants can keep this one in 14. Again, 14 is a lot. You've said it before.
Yep.
I think the only team who's like consistently capable of doing it would be like the Chiefs and Bills. And even then, they don't even do that sometimes.
Yep.
So I'm going Giants because I think they're going to keep it within 14, but I still think the Eagles will win.
I hate fucking big spreads. All right. I have Rams Seahawks. I have the Seahawks 6.5 favorites. This is such a tough line. I know it's their job for this like the guys who make the spread to put you at this line where it's supposed to be a hard choice. This is one of the harder ones I've seen all season long. I'm gonna take the Rams. I've said it 4 different times through the first picks that something to play for, nothing to play for. I'll take something to play for. But the Rams have been playing pretty good football. They don't have to give a shit what happens to Baker Mayfield, so they can still start him because he's not playing for him next year. And the Seahawks have been on kind of a skid. Again, I know they beat the Jets, but like, Seahawks haven't been playing great football. I think that the Rams can easily keep this within a touchdown.
I think I'm going to fade you here because I think it's the Seahawks. They're at home and they're playing for a playoff spot. I'm 100% thinking the Seahawks are going to win this by 18. I don't know how, but it's the Rams still. They're not that good. It's still Baker Mayfield. I put some respect on his name a few weeks ago when he had that, winning drive, but ever since then we haven't really seen the same. So I'm going Seahawks here. I'd love to see them again in the playoffs, and I think that would be incredible. I think they have the chance here, so I would love to see that.
It's the same logic I used 3 different games earlier in these picks, so I don't even blame you, but that one I feel so much less confident in. All right, I have Chargers Broncos. Broncos are 2.5 favorites at home. Man, this one's another one that technically doesn't really matter. I think the Chargers are a better team 3 weeks ago when it mattered. Now that it doesn't, I think the Broncos defense is good enough that the Broncos can probably cover that spread when the Chargers don't have to try. So I think I'm leaning Broncos.
Yeah, agreed. I got to go Broncos here. Chargers are going to rest and stay healthy.
Another big spread because gamblers hate me.
Well, I was looking at.
Yeah. I have Cardinals 49ers. 49ers are 14-point favorites. I hate this so much. Look, do you want to go first on this one? Because you know what my point's going to be. It's the same as the Eagles.
All right. You heard it here first. All season, except for one game, I haven't taken. And that was this past, the Giants and Eagles, right? I got to take big spread. Niners all the way.
I hate that I'm doing this with you because I got to take the 49ers too. 49ers have the ability to play for the first seed. Cardinals don't have anything to play for, and the Cardinals are injured and kind of bad. It can't be anyone but the 49ers. But the Niners are going to win this game. All season long, the Niners have been hey, we're way better than you, but we're only going to win by 5. They're going to win this game by 13, and I'm going to fucking cry. I have the Cowboys and the Commanders. Cowboys are 7-point favorites on the road. Look, I'm with the Cowboys. It's the same thing. They got something to play for. They can still earn home field advantage in the playoffs versus a away game in the playoffs. Commanders aren't that good. They've been choosing to start Carson Wentz. No, dude, no, it's the Cowboys.
Yeah, I got to go Cowboys. I think that, again, this is the same time that the Eagles game starts. They won't know the winner later, so I think Cowboys are going to play their heart out, try to get that first seed. Hopefully, listen, I would love to see some noise, but I'd love to see your Eagles get that number 1 seed.
Fair enough. Last game of the week, Sunday night, not Monday night. Lions and Packers. Packers are 4.5 favorites at home. Yeah, same boat. Look, this is one of the hardest picks all season because there's the very real potential. If the Seahawks lose earlier in the day, right, this is you win for the playoffs, you lose, and you're done for the year. This could potentially be biggest stakes of the season. Division rivals against 2 teams that have been inconsistently good all season.
Yeah, I mean, again, we just watched the Packers hang 41, but we also saw the Lions do decently. I'm going to go Packers here.
You said you cut out a little. You said Packers, right? You cut out a little.
Yeah, Lambeau. Okay. Yeah.
4.5 is tough, man. Regardless of who wins this game, I'm expecting it to be last second field goal. I'm only taking the Lions because it's 4.5. I expect this game to be won by 3 points one way or another, so I'm taking the Lions. Fuck, man. I'm excited for that game, and I don't give a shit about either team. All right. I think I mentioned our records earlier, but I'm going to do it again just in case I didn't. Both of us at 115, 135, and 4 with the pending game. Depending on how they resolve that, I'll update you guys because we did pick separately on that one. As always, lines are provided by FanDuel. As of Thursday this week, they are subject to change, as we noted earlier, because we had different lines. Please gamble responsibly. Remember that we are not providing gambling advice, solely providing our picks. If you or a loved one has a gambling problem, please call 1-800-GAMBLER. I think we've talked enough. This has turned into a long one because playoffs are fucking difficult. So I got nothing left in the tank. You got anything else? All right. That wraps us up then. Next week, be prepared for shitloads of playoff breakdowns. We'll see you guys there.